Welcome to the third lesson of the graphic design course. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to merge completely different photographs together like they belong. For this example, I'm going to take this forest photograph, and from this photograph, I'm going to take this person and paste him over here and make him look like they belong. So firstly, we need to select the person. There are a couple of ways to make a selection in Photoshop. One of the easier ways in the new version is you can go up to select, subject, and it will automatically select the possible subjects in the photograph. It did a pretty good job of selecting the person. We can clean the selection with the magic wand tool. But let me show you another new way of selecting a subject in Photoshop. Press Ctrl D to unselect, Ctrl or Command T depending on whether you are on Mac or a Windows PC. You can select the object selection tool. It is just like a manual way of using the select subject tool. So how you use this is you draw a box over the object you want to select, and it will automatically identify the object and select him or her. It did a pretty good job, but it did not select the cowboy hat properly. So we can select that manually by using the quick selection tool. Let's check for any other areas. Let's zoom in. It didn't select his finger properly. So again, with the quick selection tool, I think it did a pretty good job. Let's check it out. You can press Ctrl C and let's press Ctrl V. It did a pretty good job, but it selected this area right here between his arm and his body of the other photograph, which we do not want. So we'll have to deselect that area. Now one way of deselecting that area is we can add a layering mask. Over here is the option to add a layer mask. Click on it, and then we can use the brush tool, B for the brush tool, and painting on with black will remove the selection, and painting on with white will add the selection. This is painting on with black to remove the selection, and this is painting on with white to add the selection. So we need to paint on with black in that area between his arm and his body. Let's zoom in a little bit and make it clear so that the photos look like they belong together. We can clean up some up here as well. Now I think so it looks much better. The photograph looks much. Now let's resize him according to this photograph. Since the trees are quite tall, and I'm sure a person doesn't look this tall when standing next to these trees. So in order to resize a photograph in Photoshop without losing its quality or resolution or pixels, whatever you want to call it, you need to create a smart object. So we can create a smart object by right clicking on the layer and clicking convert to smart object. Once it's converted, you will see this symbol over here that shows that it has been converted to a smart object. Now you can resize it as many times as you want, and it won't lose quality. So now we need to make as if these pictures belong together. So let's do a little bit of photo touching and photo editing. So we need to mess with the layers panel. One way of adding layers, adjustment layers, is we can go to image with the layer selected, go to adjustment, curves adjustment layer. Now the curves adjustment layer is a good way to mess up with the light areas, dark areas, highlights and the shadows. Over here the left side slider shows all the dark areas, and on the right side are all the light areas. We can drag the slider down to make the lighter areas darker or the dark areas more darker, and we can slide it up to make the dark areas lighter. Over here the channel is RGB. You can manually go to, for example, reds, and we can add or remove reds. This step over here is a step of experimentation. Experimenting with what feels right. We can go ahead and mess with the greens. I think so the greens don't need a lot of messing to do with. What about the blues? I think so we can subtract a little bit of blues. Just a little bit. Right, okay. Now since that image was a smart object, all the filters applied to it will be a smart filter, as we can see over here. And whenever we want to edit the filter, we can just click over here on the curves, double click on it, and it will open the panel, and we can edit, make adjustments over here. Now let's mess with the brightness of both images. Now if I go to the brightness adjustment layer with the same way, image adjustments, brightness and contrast, it will only apply to this single photograph. Let me show you. See? But we want to make both images look like they belong together, so we need to apply the effect to both the layers. In order to do that, we can go over here and select brightness and contrast from over here, and it added a new layer on top of both the layers. The effect will apply to both layers. Let's check it out. Yeah, I think so this looks good enough. We can go to selective color and we can mess with different colors from over here. Let's mess with the reds. We can add more cyan or remove cyan from reds. We can add magenta or remove magenta from reds. We can add yellow or remove yellow from reds. Or we can add black to reds or remove black from reds. Same way we can mess with individual colors. Let's mess with the blacks. Let's make the black just a little bit darker. Remove just a little bit of yellow from black. Just a little bit of magenta. And add a little bit of cyan to it. There's a lot of greens in this photograph. Let's see what happens if we mess with the greens. Let's add a little bit of cyan. Or remove cyan. Nothing much is happening. Let's add magenta. Or remove magenta. Subtle changes. There are subtle changes. Let's remove magenta. Let's add a little bit of yellows. Or remove yellows. Let's add yellows. What about the blacks? Let's add a little bit of blacks. Let's see what else we can mess with over here. We can go to color balance and let's mess with the highlights. Shadows. You can always mess with more adjustment layers. The good thing about these two photographs is that the lighting from both of these is coming from left to right. And we can see that in the forest image, the light source is coming from left to right, and from the image that the person was taken from, the light source is also coming from left to right. Since his left side is highlighted and his right side is dark shadowed. So these photos can easily go together well. Now we can add a little bit shadows to him. To add shadows, let's create a new layer and let's bring that layer below the person. Let's select a brush tool. Select a nice large brush, maybe 199 or 200, and let's paint on with black. Make sure to paint on in the direction opposite to the light source, as shadows always occur opposite to the light source. Now we can go and apply blending modes to it. Let's see which works best. I think so soft light looks good, and we can also reduce the opacity to make it look like it belongs. We can add another layer for more intense shadowing. B for the brush tool. Soft light, and let's reduce its opacity. Yeah, I think so this much looks good enough. Now one more thing that we could do is we can give this picture a pop of light. In order to do that, let's add a new layer and let's bring this layer all the way to the top. Let's take a brush tool and let's make it really large. Let's hold Alt to sample this color. And let's add just a little bit of pop to it. Now same again, we will use blending modes. Let's go with hard light, and we can reduce the opacity a little bit to give it a little bit of a glare pop of effect.